The day began like any other, dull and unremarkable, under the sagging clouds of a planet tired of promises. Its wind moaned like a wounded beast, and the rusted towers of old Terra's city leaned into each other as if ashamed of their own survival. I walked to the edge of the wall, the same wall I had stood on when I helped her escape. I remember that night more vividly than my own name. A flash of fear in her silver eyes, a hiss of metal breaking a door open, and the look of disbelief that I would even try to save her. She had said nothing, just touched my hand with something ancient, something aching. I had told no one, not even the archive. I had burned the logs, deleted her cell entry, turned away, and let her go out into a wilderness that no one ever returned from. And now, all these years later, the sky above the crater glowed like it was being cut open from the outside. First a line, then a bloom, then fire and silence, and finally light, not the sickly white of Terran ports, or the pulse of warning sirens, but light that shimmered like memory and mystery combined. I stood frozen as the air trembled, and the people around me began to scream and run. But I stayed. I watched. I knew it was her. Before the ship even landed, before its hull cooled, before the soft footfalls of something not human touched the dust of Earth again, I knew. And I was not afraid. They thought it was the end of our era, that the lights in the sky meant death and dominion and chains from another world. But I knew better, because I had seen what mercy looked like in the eyes of something not born on Earth. And that mercy had returned not as a weapon, but as a message. Her ship did not burn the sky, it painted it. Her descent was not a declaration, it was a remembering. And as I walked across the field of scorched grass where her vessel had lowered like a dream taking form, I saw them, not just her, but others like her, tall and strange and robed in fabric that caught the wind like whispers. All around us the soldiers gathered, drones hovered, weapons buzzed, threats ready to unfold like steel flowers. And still she stepped forward, not with fear or fire, but with that same old grace, that same impossible stillness. And when she saw me, she did not speak. She reached up and placed her hand against her chest, then extended it, and every alien behind her followed suit. The Earth forces did not understand. They barked orders, screamed warnings, but I stepped between them. I told them to stand down, and when they refused, I did something I had sworn never to do. I held up the old badge, the one with the clearance code that marked me as someone who once mattered, and I said just one sentence: "This one is under my protection." And in that moment the aliens all knelt. The field fell into silence, and I saw it again in her eyes. Not fear, not anger, not conquest, just a recognition that two lives had changed each other, once and maybe again. We met beneath the shadow of the vessel, her people standing behind her like an ocean of strange faces, unreadable, unread, yet not unwelcome. And she stepped forward until we were close enough to feel the warmth of our breath in the space between us. And I waited for her to speak, but she did not need to, not with her hands, not with her mouth, for her eyes told the tale. Her memory opened, and I felt it like a river breaking its dam. I saw her flight, the wilderness she survived, the worlds she wandered through, hunted, hated, until she found them, her kin, her scattered people, remnants of something ancient and broken. And she had brought them back, not to conquer, but to return something I had given her once. Not freedom, but the proof that even on a dying world, someone might still choose hope over power. And now, she was choosing too. Choosing to come back. Not because she owed me anything, but because she remembered that moment of kindness, and wanted to answer it with something larger. She offered me her hand again, and this time I took it, and the air shimmered around us, and I knew her ship had more than weapons. It had memory, it had voices, it had stories carved into crystal and light, and it had carried her across stars to stand beside me again, to rule, but to remind. The leaders of Earth did not trust her, nor me, nor the strange calm that followed her arrival. And they summoned me with threats dressed as requests. called me before their council of blinking screens and veiled accusations. They spoke of treaties and terror, and demanded to know her purpose and her plan. But I gave them none of what they wanted, because what she had shown me was not mine to weaponize or sell or bury beneath bureaucracy. I told them the truth, that she had come not with war, but with warning that the stars were changing, that something vast was stirring, and her kind had felt it across the void. And they had come not to claim our world, but to stand beside it, because what was coming cared not for flags or factions, only for destruction. And in the face of that, they had chosen us, not because we were strong or wise, but because one moment of kindness long ago had echoed long enough to be remembered. And still the council refused. They saw only risk. They spoke of quarantines and military containment. And I laughed, not with joy, but with the sadness of knowing that fear always speaks louder than hope. But I also saw in the shadows of that room a few who were listening, really listening, the way she had once listened to my silence. And I knew the change would not be swift or simple, but it had already begun. Among her people she held no title, yet they followed her like the wind follows a storm, not out of fear, but devotion built from trials and truth. And I walked among them for the first time, within her ship that shimmered not with metal, but with memory. And I saw what they had built, not weapons, but gardens, not prisons, but places of peace and learning. And her people spoke not with sound, but with rhythm, with gestures, with shared visions that flickered in the corners of the mind. And I understood only parts of it, but what I understood mattered, for they had lost so much across time, scattered, hunted, forgotten. And yet, they had chosen still to protect, not to retaliate. And she had led them to that choice. She had shown them that even among the broken, there can be light, and even among the forgotten, there can be meaning. And as she walked beside me through that ship, I realized I was not her savior, never had been. For she had always been more than a prisoner. She had been a seed waiting for soil, and I had simply been the crack in the wall that let the sun in. And now she stood beside me, not as someone I had saved, but as someone I would follow into whatever came next. The warnings came days later, not from her ship, but from the deep void. Relays pulsing with static and fear. Outposts going dark, silent fleets drifting. The kind of silence that screams something worse is coming. And we stood on the ridge above Terra City. As the stars began to pulse unnaturally, and her people gathered, not to flee, but to prepare, and I looked at her and she at me, and no words passed. But everything was understood, and I realized the knock on my door all those days ago had not been a return. It had been a beginning. And as her ship rose into the sky, and I stepped aboard beside her, I knew that Earth's fate was no longer ours alone. It belonged to all who remembered mercy, all who still believed in choosing light. And as the stars above trembled, we did not bow, we did not run, we did not plead. We simply rose and faced it together,